Hi, this is Kathleen Wilcox with Slow Wine. I'm here with Wölffer, and we are about to taste through 5 different wines. I'm really excited to learn more. So take it away.
All right. Well, Richie and myself, looking forward to this as well. We're starting with the Noblesse Oblige. This is our rosé sparkling wine. It is a Brut style Méthode Champenoise, very traditionally made. It has 38% from Pinot Noir grapes, 62% is Chardonnay. We keep it 3 years on tirage on the yeast so that the yeast can botanize and give all its lovely flavors back to the wine. Also, it integrates this very fine mousse, of course, with sitting 3 years in a dark cellar under pressure. And I think it's a great statement for how serious Wölffer Estate is about rosé making. We always make dry rosés. We love to make fruit-driven, elegant wines that have extra character, not just, I call them airline wines, which have fruit and alcohol, but nothing gets the job done while you're sitting on a plane, but nothing else to write home about. So we want texture, we want layers, we want structure. So this has, you can get the layers and the feeling. There's an elegance, a fruit drivenness, but then you get quite a lot of power as well. And especially when it comes to food, and again, that's our most important goal in winemaking. It's that this structure, this power leans against the food. It stands up to the food. It makes a bigger experience rather than just either fade away or just being a squirt of lime on top of it. So
It's beautiful. It's really rich.
Yeah, and you know, again, these little tannins, that makes it very distinct, because if you keep your wine, the quicker you take your wine off the lees, you don't get this structure. It doesn't show how the wine's ripened in your vineyard. So it makes it more generic. While here, it adds the way our grapes ripen here, the sunlight, the way our grapes ripen, the curve we talked earlier, the ripening curve is very well reflected in this wine.
Absolutely. How long have you been making this?
We made sparkling wine the first year I came here in 1992.
Okay.
Which was quite interesting. At that time, Christian Wölffer said only French champagne is drinkable. So I made it secretly, and then finally 3 years later it was ready. So we made a blind tasting with 6 of his friends, and we had 2 different French champagnes against ours. And 3 of his friends thought ours was the champagne.
Wow.
Well, one of the champagnes, the other 3 thought it was the other champagne, and only Christian Wölffer got it right. He identified ours, but he said he got lucky. He was just guessing. So, and since then, this one we started in 2000 and where's the bottle? 2000 and it's 2000 and no, now I'm blanking. Gosh, 2005.
Oh wow.
No, that can't be.
I don't know.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. Yes. So that's the Noblesse Oblige. Sometimes we even make it in an extra brut to even highlight how great this sparkling wine is. Because a lot of people would make their rosé sparkling a little sweeter and more strawberry, more tutti frutti type of thing. And we want to be very classic, very austere, yeasty, minerality. So that's the first wine. It also ages beautifully. Our 95, 96 tastes beautifully now.
Oh, great. Okay. So it really lasts. I mean, you mentioned that being a goal for, the longevity.
Yes, exactly. So that's sparkling wine too, in our case, can age really well.
That's great.
The second wine that we make 3 different rosés at Wölffer Estate. We make the estate rosé, the gold label. We make the summer in a bottle that everybody knows, which we pick a little later so that the pH goes a little bit up, the acidity comes a little down, and it makes this very giving, very summery rosé, which has tropical flavors and honeydew melon and And then we make our reserve rosé, and everybody would think that the reserve should be sweet or rich or dark or heavier. That would be the last thing we want our rosé to be. So what we do is we pick these grapes early. They're almost like a sort of fresh, like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, this vibrant freshness, grassiness almost. But then we ferment this in 9-year-old French oak, where the fermentation is hotter because you can't control the temperature in the barrel. So there's a bit of a caramel character coming from that. And then we let it sit for I think it was even 5.5 months sur lie. Again, as I said with the Noblesse Oblige, which is 3 years on the yeast, this one is 5.5 months on the yeast. And that's what now gets you this creamy texture. And so now you have this nerviness and this creamy, more tropical flavor from the yeast and from the hotter fermentation. And they collide, and it makes our most sophisticated rosé. You get all of it. You get this freshness, and you get these. I call it my Grand Cru rosé because it's almost like a, you could call it about a great Burgundy now, or some Muscadet sur lie or something. You get this amazing structure on top of all the fresh flavors.
And you're right, there is a tropicality, but it's definitely not overpowering. I love, and the nerviness, that's a perfect way to describe it. It's delicious.
Yeah. Again, it's something very different. There's not many rosés that are with this structure and this texture.
Especially not in the US, right? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there is always, you can always find unique small things that are maybe very expensive as well. We charge, what is our charge for the Grandioso? I think it's $31. So we only make 1,200 cases of this. This is as handcrafted as it gets. We have, Richie looks after these 3 lots. We have a small Cap Franc vineyard that's very unique. We have our old Chardonnay that's planted in 1988, which goes into this. And then we have a really special Merlot block, which is, we're always debating why don't we make Merlot with it, but it goes into this block and we pick them deliberately. It's like everybody has eaten an overripe tomato. There's nothing worse than an overripe fruit. And the same thing is with grapes. Finding the precise moment, if you want to make a fresh rosé like this, is the key. You can't pick this 2 weeks later. It would make a fat, flabby wine. So that's the key. Having our vineyards right in our front of our door, in a matter of an hour from picking, they are in the press, where there's no diddle delaying, whatever the word is.
Yes.
So very a great execution of how clean and how we handpicked. There's not a single rotten berry going into this fruit, into this press.
And so this is all estate. And what about the other wines? Are they all estate? Because I know you have a mix of estate and farmed fruit.
Most of the wines that we're tasting today are like this is from the estate. There's 1% that goes into this wine, a small percentage that comes from the North Fork, from a sustainable vineyard. With the sparkling wine, we get some Pinot Noir that is also sustainably farmed from the North Fork.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
All right. Then we go to the Pearl. The Pearl Chardonnay, this is well, I don't know, they're all my children, but some are just smarter than the others, and this is one of them, I call it. It's the top Chardonnay. It's from a Dijon clone 76. It's planted in 1993 and 1994. And smaller cluster, and you can talk how well you look after these grapes. Tell some of the facts about what makes this so special.
Yeah, this block, it's about a 5-acre block. I often tell the story. I started in '97 was my first vintage, and my plan was to come and help out and bring the vineyards to health and sort of move on. And this block, after pampering it, because Roman indicated how special it was, and at the time he had some beautiful wines in the barrel from '95, which were inspiring. And anyway, when this block, when we picked it, it had this amazing balance of sugar, acidity, and pH that I had never seen after 20 years of growing grapes on the North Fork. And I was blown away by it, and it inspired me to the point where maybe partly why I'm still here today.
Wow.
That there's this energy and this amazing character that could be reached over here, not just in this block, but on this farm. And so to reach these levels of ripeness and still have energy, which to me is so important to what we do at Wölffer Estate. We can hang grapes till Thanksgiving, and the energy that's retained in the fruit is unlike, I think, any place in the world. You know, if you're from California, you own the sun, and if you're somewhere else, you own the gravel in the mountains. I take ownership of the ocean, and what it does for our wines is just amazing. And because of our proximity to the ocean, regardless of how long we have to wait for the fruit to ripen, it'll have this energy. We're not waiting for fruit to ripen while some of the fruit over-ripens.
Right.
So that's why even as we taste along today, we're going to get to the most concentrated, intense wines that we make. They still have this energy, and we thank the sea, the proximity to the ocean, the cool nights, the things that preserve freshness while the fruit's developing. And that's found in this wine like nothing else we make.
It's beautiful.
So it's 100% barrel fermented, but only 16% is new oak. We won't want to over oak a wine. That would be terrible. And it actually sits right here in these barrels over there behind Richie to the left side. That's where it ferments. It sits for 7.5 months to a leaf, which is, I always say, it's like ripping a child away too early from the mother. Just a terrible thing. Just picture that for a second.
Oh.
So the same is with grapes. You want this yeast you want the wine to sit on these leaves, because we spend so much time getting homogeneous ripening of every berry, of every cluster. And so whatever settles out, you want to stir the leaves. We stir very little, but 3 times the batonnage in this whole 7.5 months. And that's what gives this underlying texture. There's this great intensity, apple, citrus flavors, minerality, smokiness from the oak, toastiness. You almost have to smell again. You have to let this breeze a little bit. You see how this wine will open up. And the longevity of this wine, our 94, 95 drinks beautifully. What is that? That's 25, 26-year-old Chardonnay from Long Island.
Amazing.
I mean, who would have thought that we can make Chardonnay that can age 30 years beautifully?
And this energy that I was mentioning is when it's part of the wine, as it is so much in this wine. I'm getting like almost a sensory overload. I taste this wine. I smell this wine. It's aromatic. It's yeasty. It has acidity. It has density. It has yeast. It has oak, and all these things merge and are playful because of that energy, because of that acidity, because of that vibrancy, because of our proximity to the ocean. It's the wine dances. It's lively, and that's key to not just it as a food wine, but also its longevity. This wine's going to go forever. You
could also say it's the most compliment we probably get is balance, because you can always make a big wine, and you can always make an over oak wine or a heavy sweet wine or something, but you lose the balance, and then it doesn't become food friendly. Then it doesn't age well. Yeah, you can maybe in a short time you may outshine the neighbors because you're a little bolder, but at the end it has to be its own harmony, and that's what I think is the best part about the wines, all of the wines.
I agree. It's wonderful.
And again, sometimes less is more in some ways, you know.
Absolutely.
So the next wine, this is basically the flagship of the estate. It's the Christian Wölffer Cuvée.
Oh, great.
And this is a 14. The current vintage is sold out. We will be releasing the 2017 in October.
Okay.
So that's the vintage that comes out. But I wanted to show you something again. This is from the library. This is the 2005.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's a different label. We changed labels after, again, it used to be called, well, anyway, we changed labels when Joey and Mark Wölffer took ownership after the father passed away. So if I take a bottle opener here, I can take this one. So maybe talk about the vine that is planted in 1990. So if you want to.
Oh, we have a 5-acre block that was planted in 1990, and then it's on this great hill that slopes southerly, and it's the block that we most pamper. I mean, just like the wines, though, in the cellar where Roman treats every tank as an equal. It doesn't matter if he's making a rosé or this wine. It gets treated with the full respect and detail. A lot like what we do in the vineyard with this block, although we're a little bit extra careful in that we want to do everything at the ultimate perfect timing, from disbudding to deleafing to fruit thinning, hedging, mowing, anything that we feel will impact the wine. We want to do at the very height of timing. And there's things that we do that are a little extreme, like during that heat, we don't go in there and hedge. We don't we do nothing to disturb the vines. We want that ripening curve and those vines to just steadily develop. We don't want to do anything to interrupt it. So it's the block that gets all the pampering, and we see it in the vine health. It's the one that is most winter hardy. It's the one that ripens quicker and more thoroughly. It's the one that breaks bud first. It's the one that it's an amazing, as a result, this vineyard really responds. So we go down to about 2 tons the acre. It's all hand-picked and sorted in the field prior to the sorting table. So I feel like there's nothing that we can do in this vineyard that can bring the fruit to any higher level of ripeness than this block.
For example, there's not a single cluster touching each other, so that every cluster will get sunlight from all 4 sides. Not if they lie on top of each other, there will be shade between the grapes, between the cluster, which would mean those grapes are a little unriper, not as ripe as the other ones that are exposed to the sun. So it's just the perfect situation for every cluster, for every berry, for every shoot, every leaf gets positioned, 100% leaf removal in the cluster zone. So it makes our most powerful, but again, it's not a cough syrup red wine. It is a finesse, elegant minerality, classic red. This is a Merlot based. It's Merlot, 100% Merlot.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Which vintage are you tasting, Kathleen?
I think I have, I would have to go and check the bottle. Hang on, because I brought it in here. Hang on.
Nice.
I am actually trying the 2017. Sorry, I wanted to see. No, and it's really
you're ahead of us.
Yeah, I am. But it's really, it's fresh, but it's so elegant. And that's really what has defined all of your wines. It's great.
And that wine, I really recommend to lay it down for 10 years. So there's something, the tri-sherry flavors that come out when the wine ages for like 10, 15 years, that really makes the wine shine. The tannins get a little softer, the acidity calms down a bit. The fruit gets even richer. There's, again, a little bit more almond, a little bit more nutty characters come out. So it's something that, it's something to lay down.
Absolutely.
This is the 2005, which we're very proud of. This was a great vintage. We really, again, fought for every cluster, for everything. There was a bit of a rainfall that came in 2005, and we managed really well. So it's nice to see how well we do in these certain different years and how well the wine ages.
That's great. And how far are you from the ocean, just out of curiosity?
2.6 miles.
Okay. All right. That's very close. Okay.
Yeah,
Very close.
We're far enough so we don't get ocean spray or that fog that comes, right over the dunes in the summer.
Right.
So we're far enough away from that, but enough to get certainly the good influence of the sea breeze.
Close enough at times, and not very often. With the right breeze, you can actually smell it.
Oh, that's great.
You can smell the salinity
and you can hear the waves crashing. That's certainly.
The color on the next one is so beautiful. It's so rich.
Yeah, so the last wine in this tasting flight is now the Diosa. This is our ice wine, a dessert wine that we pick. We pick the grapes as late as possible so that every berry becomes golden and brown almost.
Wow.
And we pick this late October. and then actually we freeze it in a freezer house, because we are not protected by a valley like in the Rhine or somewhere. So we have these northeasterners in the fall, in December, like late October, November. You may not have any grapes if you wait until the grapes froze naturally on the vine. That's why it's not called ice wine. It's called late harvest.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
What year is that?
This is the 18. And so we freeze them, which actually works really well, because if you're waiting till end of December till it gets that cold to make a natural ice wine, you lose your best berries. Either birds eat them or they shrivel up into botrytis, which doesn't help you for ice wine. You're not making a dessert, the Sauterne style, you're making an ice wine. Or they fall on the ground because the clusters get beaten up from a storm. And if you lose 5 or 8 or 10% of your very best ripest fruit, that's a disaster. Because the greener berries, they hang on. They are tougher to shake off, but the birds don't eat those. So anyway, by waiting as late as possible, we capture all that ripe fruit. And then again, this is everything we said for the last 10 minutes in its most concentrated form. Amazing fruit, amazing acidity. It's not just sweet and cloying. Everybody can make a sticky, like a sweet dessert wine. But to make a dessert wine that captures, again, this sea breeze, that captures the freshness, this is a great example of a great ice wine.
Really? There's what tasting notes are you getting? I mean, I'm getting pear. It's so complex.
Yeah, well, you get honeysuckle in the nose. You get certainly these, melon, ripe peaches, apricot nose. But then you get these little honey flavors. There's this great sweet fruit sweetness, but there's this acidity and minerality that just keeps on pulling this wine and just extends the whole, instead of becoming cloying and sticky, and I don't like sweet wines.
Right.
This is just ethereal. It's vibrant. It's just stays fresh.
And so it keeps you going back to the glass.
Yeah.
Quite often when you taste sweet wines, they're delicious, but you're not pulled back to the glass to continue to drink it.
Absolutely.
It goes on overload. If it's just sugar, it starts poking you.
Yeah,
It becomes annoying almost. Well, this one is dancing again on your tongue, like which you said beforehand. It's just fresh.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of these wines and your perspective. And I'm really excited to see where you guys take this. You have a lot of exciting plans for sustainability, and I think it's great. So thank you.
Knock on wood.
Thank you very much.
Let's hope for a good season. And again, let's come back in 40 years and taste this wine together when we have no teeth left. We can chew on this one.
Will do. Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a good
Well,
day, guys.
New York wines.